All right, we're running through another series of preview and prediction videos this week here on YouTube. Of course, yesterday I did all the SEC teams that are playing this weekend. So I did a preview and a prediction against the spread for every SEC matchup coming up in week 5 of the college football season. Today we're going to do the same thing for all the top 25 teams, minus the SEC teams. Why? Well, we did those yesterday. Tomorrow I'll do a third one of these videos where I talk about some teams that aren't in the SEC and aren't in the top 25, but I still find them interesting for one reason or another. Let's go.
We about to turn it on.
Hey, good morning, it's Uncle Lou here. Yep, that's right, it's me, Uncle Lou, live for you on LouTube today. Thanks for watching. Man, I sure appreciate it also. And two, in addition to that as well, subscribe to this channel if you're not already. I post college football videos almost every single day of the year. Some of them are even watchable. It usually depends on whether or not the watcher agrees with what I'm saying. If they do, somehow the video becomes watchable. If they don't, it's completely unwatchable. That's just sort of the way it goes. Give this video a thumbs up if you're excited about some of these matchups coming up this week in week 5 of 2019 college football season. Doesn't cost you anything to hit that thumbs up button, but it helps me out a lot, and I would really appreciate it. Let's go. All right, we're going to do this the same way we always do. I'm going to start with the games coming up first. We actually have a couple of Friday games this week involving top 25 teams, so I'll hit those games first. Then we'll go to the Saturday games. I'll start with the early games, the noon games. I'll work up through the afternoon games, and then finally the primetime or late night games. As usual, all the numbers, odds, point spreads, money lines, all that kind of stuff that I use in today's video comes from betnow.eu. There's a link in the description of this video that'll take you over there. All right, up first this week on Friday night. This may be a pretty good game here. Friday, 8 o'clock over on FS1. We have number 12 Penn State going on the road to play a confusing Maryland team. Maryland looked unreal the first couple of weeks. Now, the talent that they played, the competition wasn't great, but just an offensive explosion from Maryland through the first couple of weeks of the season before taking a disappointing loss. So kind of hard to figure out what's going on there. Penn State, on the other hand, scored a ton of points. Also, their first couple of weeks, struggle win sort of over Pitt, winning that game 17-10, but they're ranked 12th. They're undefeated. Maryland, of course, no longer undefeated. Penn State's a 7-point road favorite in this one. I'm taking Maryland here. We see a lot of weird results on these Friday games, especially when a favored team has to travel. And that's what we have here. We have Penn State ranked, favored by 7, going on the road on a Friday night to an unranked Maryland team who's getting 7 points. I will admit that body of work, Penn State has looked like the better team, but if we can see the same version of Maryland that we saw through the first couple of weeks, this game could get interesting. That combined with the fact that I can get a primetime home underdog here in Maryland on a Friday night game, which again, a lot of strange things have happened in these Friday night games. I think it's worth it to take a risk here and go with Maryland. In fact, if you really want to try to make some money here, you could take Maryland on the money line and really make yourself some money here. I'm not confident enough to do that because of how bad Maryland looked, but I am going to take Maryland in the points here. Give me the Terps, the Turtles, the Terrapins, the Tortoises Heroes in a half shell, Maryland. All right, later that night, Friday, still Friday here, Arizona State on the road at number 15 Cal. Why? Listen, this is a perfect example of voters going, well, who's left that's undefeated in the Pac-12? Oh, Cal? Let's rank them 15. If you think there's not 15 teams in America that are better than Cal, you can't be helped, period. I'm not saying Cal's not a good team, and maybe they deserve to be ranked, but 15, I'm not so sure about that. Now, they have this game at home. They won't suffer from the weird Friday night thing. In my opinion, that you usually see the road team is who trips up in those situations. Arizona State, they're not a terrible team, but they're a 6, 7, 8 win Pac-12 South team. And there's a bunch of those this year. It looks like Utah may end up being one. I still doubt that. I still think Utah is the best team in the Pac-12 South overall, even though they did lose a game to Southern Cal. I think when it's all said and done, they'll probably finish ahead of Southern Cal. But anyway, that's not the point here. This is a tricky game for me because I'm not a believer in Cal. I think they're ranked too high, but 5 points is not that big of a spread, especially considering this game is at home, and Arizona State is the team here that has to travel on a Friday. I'm actually going to take Cal, even though I've been rough on them the last few days. I do not think they deserve this 15 ranking, but I do think they can beat an Arizona State team at home on a Friday night by more than 5 points. Give me the Bears. All right, moving on to Saturday here. Texas Tech on the road at number 6, Oklahoma. 12 o'clock on Fox. Oklahoma's a 27-point favorite in this one. Texas Tech looked good the first week or two and then laid a complete egg. Oklahoma has dominated everybody they played. I talked about this a little bit. I think it was yesterday. Was it yesterday? I think it was yesterday. There's a handful of teams that can score so many points so quickly in the first half of a game. You can afford to take them and lay a lot of points. Oklahoma is one of those teams. They've got arguably the best or second best offense in all of America, right? Jalen Hurts has been unbelievable. Their defense, while nowhere near what it needs to be, you can't really argue it has been better so far this season than what we've seen over the last 2 or 3 seasons. We'll see if that holds true once they run through a couple of Big 12 games, which is where they usually tend to give up most of their points. We'll see, and yards and things like that. But Texas Tech, I wasn't a believer in Texas Tech during the offseason. I didn't buy into the hype after the first game or two, and I'm not buying anything they're selling now. This game is at OU. There are not very many teams in America that I wouldn't take OU minus 27 at home against. OU can beat a lot of teams by 4 touchdowns, including Texas Tech. I'm going to take the Sooners here to get a big home win. Boomer Sooner, late at 27. All right, the 12 o'clock game over on ABC on Saturday is going to give us Northwestern on the road at number 8, Wisconsin. Anybody doubting Wisconsin still? I don't think so. A few people, the typical idiots, right? They go out and completely dominate Michigan. You know, you got people in the comment section, I told you Michigan was overrated. Wisconsin, big deal. Wisconsin beat it overrated. Who have they played? Listen, Wisconsin is a dominant team on both sides of the ball, and they finally have a quarterback. I'm not here to try to convince you that this Cone or whatever his name is at Wisconsin, I'm not here to try to convince you that he's Trevor Lawrence or Tua or Jalen Hurts or even Justin Fields or Jack Fromm. But he's better than what they've had, okay? He's better than Hornibrook, which is what they were saddled with the last couple of years. Wisconsin is still mostly Jonathan Taylor and everyone else. But he has a little bit of a compliment this year in this new quarterback that they have. And their defense is better, I think, than what we've seen over the last couple of years. I'm a buyer on Wisconsin. Now, they're in everyone's top 10 now, sitting at number 8, I think, in the AP poll. I had them in the top 10 before anybody else did. I didn't need to see much more than what I saw after the first 2 weeks. Again, with the who have they play. South Florida. They didn't give up a single point. They won their first 2 games 110-0. I mean, they're a legitimate team. They're not losing here at home to Northwestern. Now, they did have a big win in a big game in a big environment at home last week against Michigan. Sometimes we see teams have a little bit of a hangover from that. I wouldn't be surprised if Wisconsin has a little bit of a hangover from that and maybe has a slow first quarter. This is a tough one for me because I definitely think Wisconsin is 24 points better than Northwestern. Northwestern's been a little disappointing to me this year. Some people picked them to have a chance to win that division, the Big Ten West. That's definitely not the case now. Quarterback Hunter Johnson been a little bit disappointing. This is a tough one for me to decide here. I'm actually going to go with Northwestern and the points. I'm a huge believer in Wisconsin and what they can do, no doubt about it. And I don't feel very confident in it, and I probably won't play this game at all. It's just the hangover effect kind of scares me. And unlike Oklahoma, Wisconsin can score a bunch of points, but not necessarily, quickly like an Oklahoma, an Ohio State, Central Florida most times, although not last weekend. It usually takes them the course of a game, sort of a wear teams down thing with Jonathan Taylor. I'm gonna say Wisconsin starts out a little slow after the big win last week. They win comfortably by 3 touchdowns, but they don't cover the 24. Give me Northwestern on the road and those 24 points. All right, number 14, Iowa's at home against Middle Tennessee State, a non-con game against a lower classification school, 12 o'clock on ESPN2. Iowa's a 23-point home favorite in this one. It's hard for me to lay 23 points with Iowa against anybody. I'm just going to be honest. I do think Iowa's a pretty good team. Had a tough win over Iowa State a couple of weeks ago. Kirk Ferentz, one of my favorite coaches. He seems to get the most out of the talent he has available every single year. Check the recruiting rankings. You're not going to find Iowa in the top 25 very many years, if ever, but they always seem to hover around that 8+ win mark. Several years with 10+ wins. I like the type of program Kirk Ferentz runs. He sort of knows what he has there with Iowa, and he goes out and he gets the absolute most out of those players week in and week out. Again, I don't know about the 23 points here. I could see Iowa winning this game by 3 touchdowns, 31-10, something like that, 34-13, or 34-17, something like that. I just don't know about the 23 here. Again, this is probably one I would stay away from, but for the purposes of this video, give me Middle Tennessee State and the 23 points. Rutgers on the road at a disappointing 20th ranked Michigan team. Michigan's a 27.5-point favorite. You can find this one 12 o'clock on the Big Ten Network. I think Michigan rebounds and wins this game by more than 27.5. I know a lot of the stuff I'm doing here sounds backwards. Wisconsin looked dominant. I'm taking Northwestern. Michigan looked like crap. You see overreactions a lot in the betting world, and you see that reflected in the lines a lot of times. Fresh on everyone's mind right now is that Wisconsin is really, really good and Michigan is really, really bad. I think that's reflected in both of the lines we see here. So I'm going to go the opposite way in both those games. I took Northwestern in the points. I'm going to take Michigan and lay the points here against a bad Rutgers team. Michigan's back at home this week. I'm going to bank on the fact that maybe they get some things figured out offensively, although, I mean, let's just be honest. Michigan's probably going to have to win this game 28-0 to cover this 27.5. Offense not that good. I'm going to take the Wolverines, though, later 27.5. Is there any... You remember what movie was it? Dumb and Dumber, where he's like, can we be together? Can we do that? I love you, blah, blah, blah. And she looks at him and he goes, what are the chances? She looks at him and she goes, 1 in a million? And he gets this big smile on his face. So you're telling me there's a chance? Clemson on the road at North Carolina, 3:30 on ABC. Number 1 ranked Clemson is a 26.5-point favorite. North Carolina was sort of the darling of the college football world the first couple of weeks of the season, right? They beat South Carolina as an underdog, and people say, oh my God, they beat South Carolina. Well, now we know South Carolina's not a very good team. They beat Miami in week 2, and people are like, gee, could they win the division? What's going on here? Well, now we see that Miami, not a very good team. They go out last week and lose to App State. They also lost the week before. It's just been a weird year for UNC on the surface, but if you sort of dig down and look at it, not that weird, really. They beat 2 really bad teams the first couple of weeks. Now, a lot of people had North Carolina picked to lose those games in the offseason. So maybe they still end up having a better year record-wise than what a lot of people expected, but I don't think that means they're necessarily a better team than what people expected. I think Miami and South Carolina were worse than what people expected, honestly. Clemson's a 26.5-point favorite. The starters didn't have to play much last week for the Taters against Charlotte. They'll have to play a little bit more this week against North Carolina, which is what you want if you're going to take Clemson in this 26.5. I think Clemson will be winning this game by 4 touchdowns at halftime. The question is going to be, do they leave Trevor and ETN and those guys in for the second half, maybe even the third quarter, which is what I think it would take to cover this 26.5 against North Carolina? I'm going to say that they do. Clemson's offense, they played Charlotte last week, so forget about that. Trevor Lawrence only had like 100 yards. He barely played. But generally speaking, Clemson's offense has not been what people thought it would be this year. Now, we can argue about the competition that they've played, and maybe, they haven't had a reason to really break out or explode yet. Well, we can say pretty much anything we want, but if you look at Clemson's offensive numbers right now, and then you go back and if you could go back in time and talk to people in the middle of August, where people said Clemson's offense would be at this point in the year and where they actually are is pretty far apart. I think Clemson starts to get that turned around this week. I think some people are going to be on North Carolina here. They're at home and sort of maybe a can Mac Brown pull an upset thing. I don't see it happening. I think Clemson rolls big in this game. Give me the Taters, later 26.5. This might be the game of the week here, 3:30 on NBC. Number 18, Virginia, on the road at number 10, Notre Dame. Virginia, similar to North Carolina, sort of a media darling the first couple of weeks of the season. Everyone loves Bryce Perkins, their quarterback. Look, Florida State is terrible, and I get that. But for Virginia, that was a big win. You just have to understand the history of the ACC and Virginia and Florida State to sort of get that. But that was a big home win for Virginia. And, they laid an egg last week. There's no way around it. They barely beat a bad, was it Old Dominion? Who was it they played? I think, anyway, they barely beat a really bad team last week. This is going to be a good game. Notre Dame, an emotional, hard-fought, physical loss last week on the road at Athens, Georgia. A long way to travel for Notre Dame and turn around and travel back. Will that affect them this week? Notre Dame's a 12.5-point favorite in this one. I wish they were 14.5. I would definitely take Virginia. I'm still leaning towards taking Virginia in this game, though. I was impressed with Notre Dame. I think overall they're a little bit better than I thought they would be, particularly defensively. Their offense didn't do a whole lot to blow me away outside of, maybe Ian booking that tight end over the middle. I'm going to roll the dice here. I do think Notre Dame is a better team than Virginia. I'm going to roll the dice and take Virginia in this 12.5 here. Maybe Notre Dame, comes out a little sloppy, a little hungover from last week, whatever the case. And this game stays closer maybe than some people think. Bryce Perkins is going to have a big day running the ball. If you go back to that Louisville game, though, that Notre Dame played week 1, that's really the only comparative team here in terms of offenses with a runaround quarterback. He did give Notre Dame some problems. If Bryce Perkins can do that, I think Virginia can keep this game close. And if Notre Dame's not careful and they don't let this Georgia game go, they could lose this game. I don't expect that to happen, but they could. We see that happen a lot. A loss ends up costing a team another loss in a game they shouldn't lose the following week. Don't let that happen, Notre Dame. But I am going to take Virginia here and the 12.5 points. Here's another good game. But these 3:30 games are pretty good this week. Number 21, Southern Cal on the road at number 17, Washington. 3:30 on Fox. Washington is a 9.5-point favorite in this one. Southern Cal's down to their third-string quarterback. They seem to keep getting better every time they lose a quarterback. JT Daniel went down. It actually looked better with the backup. Backup goes down last week. They end up beating what most people thought was the best team, not just in the Pac-12 South, but maybe in the entire Pac-12, Utah. Washington has an unexplainable loss to Cal. Other than that, they've looked dominant. Jacob Eason has looked good, throwing for about 300 a game, ton of touchdowns, not very many interceptions. Washington's defense, although probably not as good as some of the defenses that Chris Peterson has had at Washington, has played pretty well, even in the Cal game. What did they lose that game, 14-7 or something? Defense has played well all year. 9.5, that's under 10 points. They're at home. The beginning of the year, I picked Washington to win the Pac-12, and I picked Southern Cal to struggle. Now, through the first 4 weeks of the season, Washington has a loss that I didn't see coming, and Southern Cal has a win or two that I didn't think they would get. I think that self-corrects this week. I think Washington gets a home win here over Southern Cal. I think it's going to be too much Jacob Eason and too much offense in this game for Southern Cal to keep up. I'm going to take the home team, the Huskies, and lay that 9.5. Indiana on the road at Michigan State. Michigan State's ranked 25th. They're a 14-point home favorite here. 3:30 on the Big Ten Network. Indiana, an underwhelming team. They're just not very good. Michigan State, one of the best defenses in all of college football. But for some head-scratching reason that no one can seem to figure out, they are mimicking their brother Michigan's offense. And really, for no reason. They had a pretty good offense 2 years ago. People thought it would be good last year. And they got absolutely decimated with injuries. Quarterback, wide receiver, running back, several offensive linemen. At one point during the season, their top quarterback, running back, and wide receiver were all out at the same time. They had a total of 9 players missed games off that offense at one point or another last year. So people looked at all that from last year. They're all coming back healthy this year, and they said, okay, if Michigan State can have a good defense again, which they do, and the offense can stay healthy, which they have, Michigan State can have a really good year because they can put that offense and defense together and potentially be a threat there in their division in the Big Ten. That hasn't happened. Their offense has been absolutely horrible. It's like Michigan and Michigan State are having a contest of who can have the worst offense. It's hard to watch. But Indiana is that bad. Indiana's going to struggle to score on Michigan State at all. I would be surprised, honestly, if Indiana gets into the double digits in this game. And I do think Michigan State can score in the 24 to 35 point range here against Indiana. I'm going to take the home team, the Spartans, and lay that 14. Florida trying to rebound from that heartbreaking loss on the road at Pitt last week. Pitt got out to a huge lead in that game, 21-0. Central Florida fought back, actually took a lead, 24-21, and then lost the game late. They're back at home this week, ranked 22nd. This game comes on 7 o'clock on ESPN2, and Central Florida is a 43.5 point favorite. And guess what? I'm laying those 43.5 points. I'm glad Central Florida lost last week, so we don't have to hear about them anymore in terms of playoffs and things like that. But I still believe that UCF is the type of team that can put up a ton of points and really bury people in a hurry. UConn is not a good team. I'm going to take the home team here to rebound from a disappointing loss last week. This is going against the grain a little bit. I think a lot of people are expecting Central Florida not to pack it in, but to play with a little bit less intensity now that they've lost a game. But you got to keep in mind, they're still trying to finish the season as the highest ranked Group of 5 team so that they can get another New Year's Six Bowl, which of course would give them another crack at one of the big Power 5 teams in a New Year's Six Bowl game. So UCF still has plenty of reasons to run the schedule and finish with just that one loss at Pitt. I'm going to take the home team here, lay the 43.5. K-State on the road at Oklahoma State. This one is a weird one here. 7 o'clock, only on ESPN Plus, so you got to watch this one online or on a smart TV or something. It won't be on cable or satellite or anything like that unless you're local. Maybe it's on a local channel in Oklahoma, but nationally, you're not going to find it on TV. K-State ranked 24. Oak State unranked. Tough loss to Texas last week. Well, it ended up being, was it 36-30, 38-30, something like that. Oklahoma State's a 4-point favorite against Kansas State. I've been high on Kansas State this year. I think they made a really great hire in Cliff Kleiman, how you say it, I don't know. Tennessee needs to look at that. That's how you properly go out, evaluate coaching candidates, and make a good hire. Been a long time since Tennessee's done that. Might want to look into it. I don't know. Oklahoma State, Gundy, the mullet, great offense. Chubba Hubbard, is that his name? Chubba Bubba Bubba, whatever the hell. Great running back. I think this will be a high-scoring game. Kansas State, okay offensively. They're going to try to run the ball. Oklahoma State can do both. They can air it out or run it. I don't understand the 4 points here, though. I know K-State has been a little bit better than people thought. I think Oklahoma State, though, has been exactly what people thought, which is a dangerous team that has the ability to knock off one of the big boys in the Big 12 on any given week, but is going to find a way like they do every single year to lose 3 or 4 games. I don't think this will be one of them at home. I think Oklahoma State wins this game by a couple of touchdowns. 4 points seems way too low to me. Give me Oklahoma State, lay the 4. How about Ohio State at Nebraska? Man, there was a lot of people excited about this one at the beginning of the year, weren't there? Yeah. Not so many people excited about it now. Nebraska, one of the most disappointing teams in America. If you're them in Michigan, I guess, if you're looking at expectations versus reality. Not only have they lost some games that people didn't think they would lose, I don't think anybody gives them a shot to win their division anymore. A lot of people did in the offseason. But probably the most surprising thing about Nebraska this year is the lack of development or improvement from Adrian Martinez. So far, he was better last year than he was this year. And he broke a ton of records last year. He was on everybody's Heisman list heading into this season. He's already lost the Heisman. I mean, he hasn't had a single game that really jumps out at you yet. Maybe that changes this week against Ohio State. I don't know. I do think this will be the best offense that Ohio State's defense has faced. But defensively, Nebraska is nowhere near where they need to be, in my opinion. I think Justin Fields and this Ohio State offense are going to have a field day against this, no pun intended, or was it? Anyway, I do think Justin Fields and Ohio State will have a field day against this Nebraska defense. They'll score a ton of points again this week. Ohio State's done nothing but cover every single spread all year long, no matter how high the spread has been. I think they're going to do it again on the road at Nebraska. The only thing that worries me about this game is the home crowd environment and how Justin Fields is going to handle that. Because even though us, we on the outside looking in at Nebraska are disappointed in what we've seen from Nebraska this year, the Nebraska fans, the Nebraska crowd have been waiting on this game since last season ended. It's going to be a crazy environment there at Nebraska, and really the first time Justin Fields has gone into anything remotely resembling a hostile environment. So if there's any question or doubt about this game, to me, it's how Justin Fields handles that in sort of his first time doing it. I think Ohio State defensively is going to be enough to overcome that, even if Justin Fields is a little bit rattled in the first quarter. And, Ohio State can still hand the ball off to J.K. Dobbins. They've got a ton of weapons on the perimeter. It's not like they're a one-man band with Justin Fields there. And even if he starts off slow in the first quarter, we saw last week when he put up 6 touchdowns in the second quarter, he can go off at any time. I'm going to take the Buckeyes on the road here and lay that 17.5. All right, and last on the list, the late game Saturday night, Washington State on the road at number 19, Utah, 10 o'clock FS1. Utah is a 5-point favorite. That's not enough. Washington State, I've got some real concerns after seeing what they did last week with UCLA. Got out to a huge lead. Was it 49-17, I think? Ended up losing. It was just one of the weirdest things I've seen in college football in a long, long time. Washington State, of course, offensively has the ability to score a bunch of points. That's not a surprise. It's a Mike Leach coach team. We've seen this for 10, 15 years from Mike Leach, going all the way back to his time at Texas Tech, was it? Yeah. Guy can't win a division to save his life, though. Mike Leach, Jim Harbaugh, Dan Mullen. Any of these guys ever plan on winning a division? I don't think so, but we have to keep listening to everybody tell us how great of a coach they are. Epic collapse by Washington State. Utah, of course, lost last week, too. A heartbreaking loss to Southern Cal. Well, Southern Cal being down to the third-string quarterback. I just think Utah's a better team than Washington State. Forget about last week. Yes, Utah lost. Washington State, epic collapse, but scored a ton of points. Just forget about that. I just think Utah's a better team. I think they're better coached. I think they have better lines of scrimmage for sure. They definitely have a better defense. I like Utah's offense to slow this game down here with the running game. Try to keep Washington State's high-flying offense off the field. I think this could be a close game, maybe 7 to 10 points, but I don't think the 5 is enough with Utah being at home. Give me Utah, lay those points. All right, that's it. That's the preview and prediction against the spread for all the top 25 matchups this week, except the SEC games, which, of course, I did yesterday. I really appreciate you guys watching. Don't forget, tomorrow there'll be another one of these preview and prediction videos that will have teams that didn't fit into yesterday's category, the SEC, or today's category, the top 25. So, teams like Miami, Florida State, UCLA, whatever, teams that aren't ranked, right? You guys get it by now. We do the same schedule every single week. All right, appreciate you guys watching, and have a good morning.